Hey, this is Don from Padlock Technologies once again with another video, a quick walkthrough video, actually. Now, in my other videos, we did on-prem FMC. We saw what that looks like. We did FDM. We saw what that looked like. That's the on-box management. Now we're going to take a look at CDO, which is kind of the I guess go between local management and on-prem FMC because this is actually in the cloud. So let me first tell you, this was a trial version. I need to extend it. Hint, Cisco. Anybody out there that wants to throw me an extension real quick so I can actually show some more detailed information and more features of CDO. Because I personally believe that if you had a option to pick CDO FDM or on-prem FMC. I'm leaning more towards CDO because this is in the cloud. You can pretty much manage your boxes from anywhere, or my CDO or something like that. If you're a smaller client and you just don't have those people on staff, I could technically manage all your FMCs. I could actually technically manage your FMCs because this does hook into an FMC if you have an on-prem. And I can also manage your just box period just from here. So it will look like an on-prem FMC is managing your FTDs. Now, there is some caveats to this, and I'll explain it. But yeah, I think the more they keep doing more features or adding more features to this, I'm starting to see like on-prem FMC will probably be obsolete. But again, you can have a hybrid cloud on-prem model. So, and that's what I technically do. If you have an on-prem FMC and you wanted to do like co-manage services for FTDs, just for that continuity insurance plan, I would hook my I would hook my CDFMC into your on-prem FMC. You can manage it while you're there. And then if you run into a problem, I no longer have to go and, oh, let's do a WebEx session, blah, 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 blah. I can pretty much go into CDO, log into your FMC and kind of help you and coach you and fix any problems that need to be fixed. Or, you go on vacation or, worst case scenario, somebody quits that was your firewall person. Well, you have, me and my team on the back end that can help you out. So with all that being said, let's look at, CDO. So CDO is basically the cloud managed software here. Now, it's not just FMC in the cloud. It does a lot of other things that you can get into. You can do your dual security. You can get into secure access from here. You can get into a whole bunch of other platforms, XDR, all that good stuff. But this is what you're going to normally see. Now, obviously, you won't see your trial period has expired. Mine just expired. Again, hint Cisco, throw me another extension here so I can actually show more stuff because I think this is the way to go. But as you can see, you have your policy analyzer and optimizer. This is unique to the CFMC or CDO because this is kind of in beta right now. It will look at your policies and then it will say, hey, what rules are redundant? What are shadow rules? What are unhealthy rules? What rules are disabled? And it'll help you. And there's some AI in the background that'll help you kind of make suggestions. It won't do it for you, but it'll make suggestions on what you should do. But again, you need to know the platform before you just take any suggestion that AI says and do it. So I suggest you look at it, but don't just implement it immediately. Then we have your devices. Now I have the FMC that you saw in my last video is actually hooked into this as well. So you can see how I can just go to the FMC from here. But I also have the firewall that you saw in my last video that was FDM. I wiped that clean and I actually hooked this into this CDFMC. Now you see that one is online. And we'll get into that so you can see it's practically the same thing that you would see in on-prem. And again, if I'm going to rank the management platforms, I'll say right now, on-prem still has a slight advantage over this. Then CDO, and I mean real slight. They're pretty much 1A and 1B. So depends on what you want. But FDM should be the last thing you should be using. Worst case scenario, it's on box for people that didn't want to buy this type of stuff, but it is an option. Configuration state, any conflicts, none. Anything that's synced, that means if I synced up anything. Here's the features, adoptions. You see Eve there. stuff that's not been, I haven't adopted any of my features yet, so I didn't put anything there. Good thing here is change log management. So I can see if somebody made a change somewhere, see my name here. It'll show me the changes. Like if I go to view changes in my event logs, it shows me everything here. Who made the change? What was the change? Stuff like that. If there's any difference in the change, stuff like that. Let's go back to home here. We also RVPN sessions. If I had any, I could just see it right there, but I don't have any RVPN. I didn't configure that yet, so you're not going to see any sessions there. What else we got? Insight and reporting. This is where you can kind of see some of the AI stuff, summary. Now, because this is this trial expired, you may not see anything. There's not going to be any data in here, but this stuff would be way more information if I started, if I had this in the past. If I had the trial still working the way it's supposed to, you would see more data. Here's some of the features that you can adopt. It kind of gives you some things that you could do, policy optimizers. Hey, how you gonna run that? This is kind of in beta mode, so this is not something that you're going to use entirely. And it gives you some feature recommendation videos, like brief tutorials on how to do it, what those settings are, or what those features are, like Eve. Your settings, basically feature adoption. That's stuff you would do normally. Then your remote access monitoring. If you were doing remote access, you would see here, same thing you would see technically on the on-prem FMC. You would see the sessions, public IP to private IP, login time, the location, the transfers and receives of data, what devices on and what username. So once somebody logs into your remote access VPN, you see all that data here. Again, you can see it from anywhere. No longer do you have to, I need to log in through VPN, then get to my FMC, then see this data. You can kind of just go into CDO and see that there. Again, if you're looking for managed firewall services, you would be hooked into mine, and I could say, hey, if you have a problem with an RA VPN user, I can just go in here and say, hey, this user seems to be on here for, why are they on here for 10 hours? Why are they on the VPN for 10 hours? Now, let me go back a bit. For people who want to do secure access, you could technically do ZTNA, and I'll demonstrate that as well in later videos. You can do if you had an on-prem FMC, you could do ZTNA, and you can get to your console without having to go through a REVPN for that. So that is a workaround, but you have to be a secure access customer. If you're not a secure access customer, you can't take advantage of ZTNA. So keep that in mind. Now, firewall threat defense. This is where you're going to see a couple things from a dashboard perspective. Now, you're going to see some information here. You're not going to see site-to-site monitoring. You're not going to see SD-WAN because I don't have any of that configured. But if I go to the dashboard, you will see a lot of information, well, some information here. And what you're going to see mainly is, since I hooked into the on-prem FMC that I have in my lab, you're going to see, once this thing finishes showing up, you'll see like, hey, here's the rules that were hit. Here we go, trust rules. Here's the access control policies that I was hitting, or access control rules I was hitting. Here's some of the percentages of allow rule versus trust rule. Now the trust rule, like I showed in my other video, was Office 365, web conferencing, video conferencing stuff. Threats, not going to see anything because I don't have any threats going through because it's a lab environment. But network traffic, this is what you have to work. You're gonna have to deal with this because now it's not as fast, because since this is hooked in through like API and stuff like that, it's going to have to go to my on-prem FMC and get that data. And then it shows up on the screen. And this is what you see. Here's my policy for my DC net firewall. As you can see the device name. This is my DC firewall. This is my HQ firewall. Here's the policy rules that are being hit. Stuff like that. Here's connection, malware versus intrusion. Same information, user information, stuff like that. If I wanted to drill down to a specific, let's go to firewall, DC firewall INET. We could technically drill down to it and see what pops up here. This is in the last hour, so this may or may not actually give you any data. I actually did give you some data here. So you can see, hey, my default internet rule and my Office 365 rules being hit, and I drilled down to that specific firewall. So this allows you to drill down a lot more to rules, and just seeing a great overview of what it's looked like. Now, you can tell that this is totally different from the last video when I showed you with on-prem FMC, which had unified events. It's not the same logging. So if you're someone that needs that very intricate logging detail that I showed you in the last video with the on-prem FMC, CDO might not be for you as your main dashboard. It may be something that you just need. Hey, I want to be able something like a co-managed service. Like I said, hey, we went in here and saw this. We need to do a deeper dive into, you know, the security events or the unified events and see what that actually is. Status, this is just going to be on your, now I only have one machine actually hooked into the CDO, which is this UK FTD, which is the one that you saw before that was using FDM that I went out. So now I can actually, I knew that was going to happen. I can actually drill down here and I can see the status of my device. Right now, this is what happens when you actually go into the FMC, the CDFMC. There's a lot of things that are different. That's why I said you have to get used to the way they do this now, because the events are no longer in the, if I hit analysis, like on my last video, you saw you can have so many different analysis that you can do. Well, in CDO, it's not the case. You got event login, the FTD dashboard that we saw before, security analysis, SD-WAN summary, and remote monitoring. That's it. If you saw the other video, that thing was probably about 3 columns long that you can analyze, file and malware, all that good stuff. Now there are different spots. You just, if you're used to on-prem FMC, you're gonna look at this and say, whoa, I don't know what I'm looking at. Now policy is still the same. So if I go to my access control policies in the CDFMC, for some reason this just wants to keep popping up on me. You can see here's the UK FTD base. Here's my UK ACP for the UK FMC. So this pretty much looks the same. Like if I go through all of this intrusion policies, I didn't set intrusion policies. Of course, this keeps coming up, but I didn't set any of this stuff up. So, you know, integrations. Now, the one thing I do want to tell you about the integrations. The integrations, I didn't put Umbrella in there yet. And I will be showing you a video with 2 things. I'll be showing you a video, another side quest of Umbrella with FTDs and then secure access with FTDs. Because again, depending on your use case, I did make a video saying secure access is better because you get more features, which is still true. But if you're a smaller company that will never take advantage of those other features, you may or may not want to go to Umbrella. Me personally, I mean not Umbrella, secure access. Me personally, I would still go to secure access because you can still do the tunneling a lot easier. You don't have to worry about doing this API stuff and all that good stuff. And it's a little bit easier. But if you're like headstrong about still being an Umbrella customer, then you can still integrate Umbrella with the FTD. Now, the thing about these integrations though, when you do Realm integration and you do identity source, which is ICE integration, you need to proxy an FTD, all right? So case in point, if I was to add a realm here that was local Active Directory, well, what I got to do is basically put all this in here and then tell the device, hey, you need to go use one of these interfaces to get there. You cannot use the data management interface to do this. It has to be something internal to get to it. It's the same thing with identity services. So as you can see, there's 2 ways you can do this. Now this is different for CDO compared to on-prem FMC, because on-prem FMC, you only have this, right? You only get this feature, which is ICE. Now, if you want to go to ICE Cloud, again, this is a feature that I really like because this is also a way that you can hook in your SGTs into secure access. Is basically ICE will basically have a connection API with PX Grid Cloud. That PX Grid Cloud will hook into CDO, will hook into, Cisco Secure Access, will hook into any other platform that can hook into PX Grid Cloud. Download those SGTs, that SGT information. And then you can create your rules based on SGTs. Right now, I didn't hook anything in here yet, but this is something you can do. All right. Just gonna cancel that. I'll get that there. Still same thing. Rarely do I see people use the passive identity alerts or agent. I rarely see people use this because the agent thing, some people just don't like agents. But for the most part, everything else is pretty much the same. Now, the other thing you will not see in here is you will not see RTC. So in my on-prem video, you saw me do a remediation instance with a correlation rule, which is technically RTC, but you don't have that in here anymore. So you can't really do RTC. So if you're looking to do that, get hybrid model, or you're going to have to go straight to on-prem FMC. This is the give and take stuff that you have to consider when going to certain platforms. Like, you're going to gain something and you're going to lose something. If the thing you're going to lose is something you can't lose and it's mission critical, then you can't go to this option. Right now, like I said before, trying to do RTC off of CDO, just not going to happen. As you can see, it doesn't even give you the option to do that, but this is still a great platform. Same thing you saw, decryption policy, identity policy, pre-filter rules, DNS policies, stuff like that. Same difference. If I go to DNS, of course, this wants to behave, and I wanted to create a policy. You see this umbrella policy. Now, this umbrella policy would allow me to, and I'll show this in the demo once I got everything configured. It will allow me to, with using API calls, go into my umbrella instance, and if I made a DNS policy, I can use that DNS policy as a backup check. So what that looks like in the rule standpoint, and this is either if you're doing on-prem or CDO. If I was to go into, let's say, the base. Now, the security intelligence policy, if I go to security intelligence, as you can see, you have to pick two policies. So the default policy is going to be the local DNS policy first. All right. And then after it goes to that, if you have an umbrella policy configured, that little arrow points to that to say, hey, if you pass my local my local DNS policy, now I'm going to use this umbrella policy as a secondary check to make sure if something slipped through this one, the first one, umbrella will catch it. Now, you need to be integrated with umbrella to do that, right? And once I get the other lab up, I'll show you that integration. I'll show you how I'll pull down my DNS protection list, and then we'll put it on here. And then anything that goes through this firewall will get intercepted. Like if it's a DNS request, it will get intercepted, looked at, and then sent out, right? And this is mainly like if AD, like say if you didn't have the VAs in your environment. Well, and everything went to your DNS server. So then the DNS request, when it goes out, would get intercepted by the firewall. Firewall would check it against its local policy, then check it against umbrella policy. What else do we got here? Dynamic connectors is something new. Allows you to, get contextual information from multiple sources and create it in your policy. Haven't really seen people use dynamic attribute connectors yet. But I do think it will eventually become that, and people will eventually start using it. But right now, nobody really uses this per se. All right, and I have it turned off, so you won't be able to see it anyway. ANT management. This is how you connect your secure endpoint customer. And this is another thing. I did a video about selling Cisco products and why Cisco products kind of edge out other vendors. And one of their biggest thing is integration. Their integration is a lot better than other vendors' products. Not saying, you ask somebody else, they're going to say something different. In my experience, the security platform for Cisco and the way it's integrated via all this contextual information sharing and API hooks into multiple different platforms that allows you to seamlessly get high visibility in your entire environment. And I made that video about before, during, after, right? Before something happens, while something's happening, or during something that's happening, and then the recovery, which is after something happens. The integration and that visibility allows you to definitely catch things faster and do something about it, compared to a lot of other platforms or the vendors where a lot of this stuff is siloed and lack of visibility because this product doesn't actually hook into another product, and then you have to use another product and another dashboard that doesn't hook into. It's a mess. So a lot of this stuff that hooks in, especially, here's another thing. If you are a Cisco firewall client, if you're a secure firewall client and you have secure endpoints, you need to be integrating that 100%, right? Because you can do your RTC based on your secure endpoint stuff. If something happens from a malware perspective, you can do that. Now, if you're a firewall, endpoint, and ICE customer, you need to implement that as well, especially in ICE, because you can do this thing called threat-centric NAC, and you can hook into Cisco secure endpoints, and then you can get that data from there. And then if you see something that's a threat on your network and you're in the ICE console, that's another thing. You have to be in the console to do this. You can actually immediately go into that session, do an ANC policy on that session immediately, and you can just block it out of the network immediately. Now, if you're depending on Cisco Secure Endpoint dashboard, unless you're in that dashboard all the time, you might not see that threat. So this is where TCNAC, RTC, and all this stuff comes into play. Now, if you're interested in that type of stuff and more detail, it's going to be linked in the description for a discovery call. Just click the link in below, schedule the discovery call, and we can talk about this in more detail. But as you can see, pretty much the same thing, right? CDO or CDFMC in the cloud is relatively the same thing as on-prem FMC. And then when you want to go back to CDO, though, you hit this return home. And it pretty much takes you back to here, to your home site. Now, from a policy perspective, again, you hit policy and go right to policies to show you the policies. Objects, here are objects that I created. Now, here's the thing. When you have CDFMC, there's two ways you can create the objects. You saw that dashboard that looked like the old on-prem FMC. There's an object management in there. Now, there's the object management here is if I create an object here, if I hit create an object, any object, ASA object, FTD object, or a VPN object. Now, I do want to tell you some other things about CDO that's very awesome. But if I can create an object here, say I click network, I create a network with the values. The only thing I don't like here, though, is you can't do overrides. You have to go into the FMC to do the overrides. So if you want to do overrides, don't create an object here. I would just create it in the object management. But if you want to create a quick object, you create it here, and then you can pull it up in your policies when you go to your FTD policies. Now, security devices. So these security devices are basically the devices that you saw in the reporting and stuff like that. Now, you can add more devices by onboarding devices. Now, here's the key with the onboarding devices, and I just did this one today. You have to be very careful with onboarding. When you do CDO, it's in the cloud, so you have to use a management data interface. You cannot just use a management interface unless you're going to expose it to the internet. But you have to do a management data interface. So that means your WAN interface is more than likely going to be your management interface. That means management is down the data plane. Something happens with your data plane, something's going to happen with your management. So now they're tied together and they're married at the hip. It's called fate sharing. So internet goes down, or something wonky in the data plane will also affect your management plane. The other thing is you have to be very, very careful when you configure your platform settings and do DNS. Because if you configure DNS and you point it to your local DNS servers, but you don't change the interface to the correct interface, you will lose access to CDO and you can't do anything. All right. I've been in a couple projects where, the interface was not adjusted, and then they lost access and they had to go into the back end and change it. And that's a pain. So you have to be a lot more detailed oriented when you use CDO, because one wrong slip up, especially if you didn't do a automatic revert configuration. If you lose access to the management, if you didn't check that button, you lose access to management, you pretty much lose access to the box. Right now, data plane will still work, but you just won't be able to manage it. So just be careful. No, but it's the same thing. As you can see, I did the registration key method. There are other methods to onboard devices, but I just did the registration key method. Now, when we talk about onboarding, this is where CDO is awesome. So if I want to onboard a device, you can see, look at all these devices I can technically onboard. ASAs, multiple ASAs, Meraki devices, FTDs, something in AWS VPC, a FTD chassis if I want to do chassis, your 4,000, 9,000 series. All this stuff can be up into CDO, and then you can manage it from CDO. This is where, I say CDO is kind of edging on-prem, because you can't do Meraki MXs and stuff like that. You can't do that. You can do ASAs, you can do the chassis, that's fine. But again, you can manage this from anywhere. And if you are with a co-managed service like mine, I don't have to, hey, let's get on a WebEx call and go through all this stuff and let's walk you through it. I literally go to my CEO. What's the problem? Let's look it up. Let's look at the event logs. Let's see what's happening. Done and done. Fix it. You're happy. We're happy. You're secure. That insurance plan, that continuity plan of, hey, I might not know what's going on, but you got us as a safety blanket before you go and call TAC. I'm not saying TAC is not good at what they do. They're awesome, but you need somebody to be able to, if you don't have the person to interpret what they're saying to you, they could be speaking any kind of language. They'll sound like they have 5 heads on talking to you. So this is where co-managed IT, co-managed firewall, and those services that we offer comes into play. Continuity, and it's that insurance plan. It's the emergency. If there's an emergency, break the glass. That's what you would partner with us for. What else is there? Secure connections. This is, site-to-site VPN are VPN connections. I don't have any here. Administration is where you would do a lot of your administration of firewall tools, putting up a FMC or CFMC. You see here, this is the CD Cloud Delivered FMC. This is what we're looking at now. And this is the on-prem FMC that's in my lab that for some reason says unreachable, but it's not unreachable because I'm seeing data from it. So I have to see what's going on with that, or maybe it looks like it may be maintenance. That's why not maintenance, but maybe something kicking in here. So I have to check my FMC to see what's going on. But that is a quick overview of CDO, why you should use it, certain things you need to look out for. Now there's more stuff, but this video would be 2-3 hours long. I don't want to do that to you guys. I want to give you enough information that, hopefully you give us a call, or you hit the link in the description and do a discovery call and see how we can actually put you in CDO, or, help you migrate a firewall to FTDs, or, if you're a Cisco rep, sales manager, you're thinking about doing POVs for your client, this is some of the stuff we can do. You saw all 3 versions we can do. We can take you from, on-prem FMC, we take you to FDM, we can take you to CDO. And if you're really trying to push CDO, now you can see we can help you push that CDO, because I personally believe this is on-prem FMC. If they start adding more stuff to CDO, on-prem FMC will probably disappear. So hopefully that video was informative. This is Don from Padlock Technologies. Once again, thank you. Have a nice day.